West Knoxville.
Keith Whittington, Johnson City.
Reese Smith, Franklin.
Thank you. I'd like a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Let's move to hardships. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Move to adopt the hardships.
Second.
Got a motion and second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Carolyn, do that? Get a motion to accept the transcripts from last meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Before we move on, I want to thank Bill Mason for running the board in my absence.
You're welcome.
Thank you. License approvals, waived applicants.
I move we approve with the recommendations of the individual board members.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Want to start with the from Jerry. Do you have any interviews?
First one is
Y'all want to approve them all now, or wait till we get as we go? Just wait till the end.
Wait to the end.
Wait till the end. Okay. Mark.
I didn't interview anybody today.
Bill.
I did 3. 71703 Quality Mechanical. There was they sold the business, the existing business 69088, sold it to the new owners, which is 71703. The minority owner had a felony. He's been off probation for 10 years. He only served 14 months of a original 15-year sentence, and his wife is the majority owner and seems to keep him in line pretty good. So I'm going to recommend that we approve that one. On 71809 Centos Corporation, also a felony. He's long ago the qualifying agent. This is a very large corporation, national in scope, but the qualifying agent had a felony many years ago, been off probation for quite some time, and also recommend that be approved. And then on home improvement number 4944, inside and out home improvement, let his license expire, did work over the limit after it expired. I recommended a $250 consent order and then approve reinstatement.
Thank you, Bill. I have 2. Native Restoration, 8706. Building over license, $39,000, and I would like to find for $200 on that one. And then I have another one. Wilson Construction and Projects Incorporated. And number 65014. He had a license for $430,000, and he did 4 projects that exceeded his limit anywhere from $200,000 to $400,000. I would like to see a fine of $250 for each one of those projects, which would give a $1,000 total fine. He has applied to increase his monetary limit from $430,000 to $1,500,000, which would take care of what he'll do now. One of the problems that he had with the overages that he got information from the building department that whatever they put on the building permit was okay. In other words, if the building permit said $400,000, as far as he was concerned, he was covered under the $430,000 license. Of course, that didn't include your land and the profit and other things that go with your building permit that's supposed to. But he went by what the code enforcement gentleman said, and again, he has applied for $1,500,000, which he can do without a problem. And so, like I said, I'd just like to recommend a $1,000 fine. That's it for me.
I had one that was it's Lubin Enterprises, existing license 34145, that had a prior felony by the qualifying agent. They were wanting to add a plumbing license to an existing mechanical and electrical license. The felony was in 1994. The gentleman, Mr. Hankins, served 6 months of house arrest and 6 months of probation, and has been clean ever since, off probation. Great references, good history, work history. I would move that we grant them their plumbing license. That's all I have. Do you have that?
Okay. Let's see, I move that we approve 71791. He's completed probation in 2015. Great references. He's financially sound. So I make a motion we approve that license for CE.
I've got one. It's application number 71755. It's an application for a BCA. It was reviewed by another board member as a waived file previous to the meeting, called in for an interview. After my interview and asking questions about the experience listed, I've decided to recommend that we deny this license because of the lack of experience in the BCA category.
Please.
Okay, I had one 71726, Tollett Masonry, new application. I move for approval of their license subject to a $500 fine. They had 2 instances of LMC bidding to an LMC, and they were not sure that they needed a license. We're told by the licensed LMC they didn't. They admitted to it, turned to themselves, and I move for approval on 71726.
Do I have a motion to approve? So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. LLEs?
We need to do revisions.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I already checked it off. Revisions?
Move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
I was a little quick with my pen. LLEs?
Make a motion we approve the LLEs that are listed except for 61276, and he is incarcerated until 2034. It's in form of a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is that all you have? LLPs?
I make a motion that we approve all the LLPs that were presented in your packet. They were all just waiving their test for typically an expired license, so I make a motion that we approve those.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's move on to legal report. Waiting on our attorney. He's looking.
The only change that, we've spoken about this in subcommittee, under page 42, this will be under the represents, under electrical. Case number is 2016-034551. Recommendation originally had been to authorize the assessment of $1,000 civil penalty by consent order and authorize formal charges for violation of TCA 626-118A1. The board decision at that time was to concur. The update from Ms. Brown, I believe Mr. Mason might have had a question about this in subcommittee, was that the respondent provided documentary proof indicating that none of the permits were pulled by him and he does not work for the electrical company. Respondent is still properly licensed, is recommended the matter be closed. And to sort of supplement that, the inspector, or the investigator rather, gathered all the permits and none of them were actually pulled by the respondent. So that was the basis for recommending closure of this.
That was an explanation on one we had a question on, but there were other changes on the legal report, or different recommendations, were there not?
Number 2, 2017-03-9761. Decision, voluntary suspension and a $5,000 fine if not agreed. If not, then move to a formal hearing. Next, number 6, 2017-04-5761. Decision for a consent order unless $250 civil penalty and a consent order, and he can get the license after he gets paid, after he pays. And number 1, this is under plumbers and LLPs, 2017-04-1281. Decision is for a letter of warning.
That's all in the commercial subcommittee, the
Correct.
changes. What about in the residential?
Number 6, 2017-03-2041. Here the recommendation was for authorize the assessment of $1,000 civil penalty. I believe the recommendation from the board was either to suspend or revoke, given the fact that the licensee is still currently in a grace period. Next, number 7, 2017-03-3271. Recommendation here is for a letter of warning.
I think that's where you're going to.
28. 2017-04-7881. Recommendation to be changed from a $1,000 civil penalty to a $3,000 civil penalty. Number 39, 2017-05-1601. Here, recommendation to be changed from a $5,000 civil penalty to a $3,000 civil penalty. Number 8, this is on page 31, 2017-04-1211. Recommendation was essentially just to revisit some of the facts as to whether or not there were any codes violations, and if so, to reduce the civil penalty, recommended civil penalty from $1,000 to $500. Page 37, number 20, 2017-03-8791. Recommendation there to reduce from a $1,500 civil penalty to a $500 civil penalty. Page 43, number 1, 2017-04-1281. Recommendation here is to issue a letter of warning as opposed to closing the.
Move to approve the legal report.
Have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Let's go to Go Bill update.
Hello, I'm David Stansel. I'm the president of Stansel Electric Company here in Nashville, Tennessee. I serve in a volunteer capacity as the board chair of Go Build Tennessee. I'm here to give you an update and any other details that you want, you can ask for, or I try to give Carolyn all of our financial reports and so forth, so that should be available to you as well. But just to recap, our first year was really focused on launching and deploying the brand as aggressively and widely as possible, which was a kind of a shotgun blast approach with a lot of media and so forth, trying to get people aware of the program and affect influencers as well as students who were trying to get interested in the trades. We did a big social media program as well to engage as many Tennesseans as possible. Now that we've gotten our audience kind of more narrowed down, we're going to do a more focused approach targeting the people that we've kind of got now. And so as the message becomes more local, we think we'll have more local news type stories, things like that, resonate with people in their communities. But we know we've had the ads have been seen 70 million times. 38,000 Tennesseans visited our website. An average of 25,000 Tennesseans are reached each week on our Facebook activities. We've sent out 150 educator toolkits to educators around the state. We attended 40 events our first year, and we have more than 50 on the calendar for this year. So that's good. That's growing. We've added more than 40 additional training programs to our website since we started. And the biggest kind of change this year is we hired, or we didn't hire, but brought on board through contract with Go Build National, a grassroots coordinator, so that can help us as we participate in these events and coordinate the volunteers and the associations that are part of Go Build in Tennessee. And so we've done some interesting things like some student presentations, And we did a Touch a Truck Day at the Adventure Science Center. I don't know if any of you heard that, but that was a big success, kind of targeting younger students. We have been doing an Ambassador of the Month, which is someone that's in the trades or in training, and we're adding now a Training Program of the Month. We've updated our website, and if there's one thing from a metric standpoint we're disappointed in, our main goal is to get more students in training programs throughout the state, and that's our measure of success compared to our baseline. Those numbers come out so late, it's hard to see the impact yet. We know anecdotally from talking to people in the training programs that there's more people in programs, that when we ask them, do you know what Go Build Tennessee, or how did you hear about training programs, or what got you interested? We know Go Build is having a big impact from that anecdotal. But we're going to do our first statewide survey, Go Build Tennessee is, this spring, so that we can have something else that's we get more timely as far as our impact. So that's what we're doing. So any other specific information about our activities, I'm happy to report on. The other thing we wanted to let you know, the board wanted to make sure you knew about, is our program was authorized only for a certain period of time, and we're going to try and get that reauthorized this year instead of waiting until the last minute or until, the program would be dead if we didn't. So we're going to try and get reauthorization done in this next session. So wanted to make sure you're aware of that. And then the last thing is, and then this is not an ask now, this is a let you know we're going to ask in the future, but the sole funding for Go Build Tennessee is through essentially through the licensing fees that come through this board. And the way that, with the projections we made at the outset that set up the program for the first 3 years, was based on what we thought was a conservative amount of revenue from that source. But as it turns out, the way it's being calculated, there's a shortfall compared to what our plan was. So in order to finish our 3-year kickoff program, we don't have enough money to do it the way we'd planned. And I know in the legislation that's in place, it requires a minimum of 50% of your surplus to go to Go Build Tennessee. So there's an opportunity there if you choose for more. I'm not presenting any information today that shows you why we would need that or what we would do that or anything about that, but I'm telling you now that is my intent, is that we would present that to you for next time. And just to give you the kind of the magnitude, I think we planned on between $300,000 and $500,000 of income per year, and it's coming in around 200. So it's in that 3 years, it's a total of I think 3 to 5 is probably what I'm thinking we'll need in order to be able to complete the program as we originally planned. As it stands, we're kind of cutting back. We're planning to do a little bit less for next year, but I'd rather not do that. But anyway, that's my update. If there's any specific questions, happy to answer any.
You giving any money to any of the trade schools at all?
So Go Build Tennessee doesn't fund any particular school. Its sole purpose is to promote trades to people and have a mind shift or a culture shift in people's minds to drive attendance into those trade schools. So our support of trade schools is not direct, it's indirect in the form of getting more people to attend.
So the first hard numbers don't come out till the spring?
These are state numbers, and it's actually for the previous year even.
Right.
So it's delayed a year. So we don't even have results, essentially, as far as I'm concerned, from our first year's activities.
But you want to get reauthorized even without results.
Well, without.
And you want to double the money maybe that we're giving to you to do that.
Well, no, I think the intent is just to have the money that we originally planned on.
The money we originally planned on was 50%, I believe. Exactly. So
It's 50, therein
Money
lies.
didn't come everything didn't come down exactly how we thought it was going to.
That's true for both parties.
Just to let you know that.
Well, what's different than what you thought?
Well, I don't want to get into it now.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to see some real numbers on it. I mean, we've always wanted some kind of observable number to give us some expectation that this is being successful. Your anecdotal things sound good to me, and I'm glad you're doing all these events. Is there any way to monitor? You've put a bunch of links on your website to training opportunities. Any way to monitor how many people that go into training were linked through our site?
Most people don't sign up through our site. They just get information for that. I'm sure we can find out how many looked at it, but that doesn't really tell you how many butts are in the seats, which is the measure that our board decided is the most important measure, is are we increasing the number of students in craft training? That is the goal. That hasn't changed. So I guess our frustration is with the length of time between when you have a year of training and when they report the numbers. That's frustrating. So that's why we're going to try and get some ourselves. But as far as having the impact that we want to have, we kind of knew it would take, you can't change people's mindsets overnight. We knew it would take at least 3 years to have the impact we're talking about. And so that's our concern, is we want to be able to at least complete the 3 years to determine if it's worth going further.
Well, it seems to me that to ask for reauthorization without any kind of definitive number on what impact's being made is a little premature. But it also seems if 50% of our fees is $200,000 and that's not sufficient, then you want to go up to 300,000 or between 3 and 500, you said, then you're basically talking about taking 75% to 100% of our fees.
I'm sorry if so I think our intent originally when we started to push this legislation was 50% of the fees, and the way it's happening, the way it's being worked out, which, if you look at the legislation, it follows the plain reading of it. So I'm not complaining about that at all. It says 50% after all expenses. So basically the operation of the board is all taken out, and then it's basically of what's left, 50% is going to go build. And I think our planning was based around a conservative estimate of 50% of the total fees.
So yeah,
that's the
but
difference.
again, after we do our expenses, if you want to go up from $200,000, which is 50% of that, to at least 300, you're talking about 75% of what's left over. We've always, there's been a board member here who's been asking for continuing education opportunities. I know I've asked for more public education opportunities and funding for that. There's been other ideas about spending some funds out of here, and we're all in favor of Go Build. I think we think it's a great idea. Nobody here wants to have less people, but there has to be some kind of a real question about how much of our what we've got to work with is taken for it. So, of course, that's to be up for the board to decide when you come to us for a recommendation on that. So, but I sure would like to see some tangible proof of the impact before the legislature. I mean, that's up to them, takes up a reauthorization, and before we decide to increase the funding for it.
I understand, and I totally agree with you. Just one clarification: the ask will be to supplement the 3-year program. So
it goes down after that.
It's essential. Well, this is a one-time ask. This is essentially my goal would be to have the ongoing annual amount be enough to sustain the future of Go Build. But what we need right now is just enough to finish the first 3-year period. So it's to cover what was less than expected in year 1, 2, and 3 is the additional that we would be asking for at this time, or when we come again.
Would you mind if Susan Ritter came up and spoke just a little bit on the Go Bill, on what the home builders have? Can you do that, Susan? Is it all right with the board to bring her forward?
Question for him, Ronnie.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Do you have the baseline numbers at
Yes,
this
we do.
point?
Yes.
So
I
how
don't have
many-
them on me, but we did get those,
Trainees are there to start with, I guess.
right. I don't have that number right here in front of me, but we got baseline information because the timing of that, those numbers are available from before we began the program, but the numbers after the first year are not yet available. And again, the first year we don't think is going to be the biggest impact. We think the biggest impact is going to be after year 2 and 3 when we have more of the grassroots reach. But we just know from talking to the people who operate training programs that there's a lot more people and that there's a lot of interest coming through because of Go Build, because they ask their people that apply to participate how they heard about it or if they're aware of Go Build, and we know that from that.
Next time you come back, can you bring us the
Baseline, absolutely.
list of all the different training programs that are signed up to
Sure.
be the basic?
Actually, I can get that to Carolyn even before your next meeting.
Tell us roughly how much you spent since the beginning?
I can tell you roughly. So the first year was the biggest year. It was a little over $1 million, and most of that money went to developing the program and the mass media, TV ads. That's the most expensive thing we do. The next year it was well under $1 million because we're not doing the big TV ads that as much. So mostly focused on the social media and the grassroots, and so. Kind of a minimum operating budget for us is probably $500,000 a year, 400, 500, something like that, depending on how much. It's just strictly the media buys would be what would affect it at that point. So, but we got money to start with that we knew the first 3 years we were going to spend more than our annual the annual amount. But we knew we needed to have that big push just to get the program going. So that was all by plan. And it's kind of now looking into the third year that we've all said, wait a minute, we need to make sure this is going to be sustainable.
At this point, it doesn't look like the board can sustain $500,000 a year for you, so we would have to.
And one of the, that's true. That might need to happen. But the other thing we did do is set up the Go Build Tennessee as a 501c3, so that our hope is, and this is what happened in Alabama. It hasn't happened here yet. But after the program was established and the results were kind of obvious to everyone, more organizations wanted to be involved and support it and sponsor it and things like that. We just haven't had that here. It's too new.
Anybody else have any questions? Susan, would you say something? She's gonna come next to you.
Susan Ritter, the Executive Vice President for the Home Builders Association of Tennessee. And I have to tell you, the Home Builders Association is thrilled with the program. We have 3 of our members on the board of directors working on a program very diligently. I believe one of them is also on the executive board. David McGowan from Middle Tennessee, a very well-known, respected home builder in this area. But if we can go backwards, I want to point out one thing. When we originally were talking about legislation and moving forward with Go Build, it was at the very same time the legislature was looking to cut the licensing fees 50%. So that's kind of how that number generated, but it was never 50% after expenses. They were looking to cut it 50%. So I just wanted to point that one little thing out. Ronnie, did you want to know something specific?
We had a gentleman speak to us at the home builder, and that gentleman talked to us, and he failed to say, he was telling about the Go Bill and everything was going good, and then he forgot to say that the members of the association are the ones that really have given the money to Go Bill through our board up here. Do you remember that?
Through the licensing fees? Well, all of our members have licenses. I don't exactly understand your question. All of our members have licenses, and therefore,
And
yes,
therefore,
they are
that money
supporting.
comes through us, and then
Yes.
we're giving it back.
Yes.
Thought I'd point that out.
Okay.
I didn't know if you had anything else to add to Go Bill or not.
No, we're thrilled with it. We see very, very positive things coming from it. And I think you're going to see a whole lot more in the future, especially with the governor's programs that are running right now as well, as far as education and adult education and all of that.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
You don't, okay. Don't want to say anything, undoubtedly. Okay. How about Home Builders Association of Middle Tennessee consent orders? Do we have anybody?
Okay, so I think a few months ago, I think Laura Martin probably brought it to you all's attention. The Home Builders Association requested that the board adopt a policy that the consent orders sent to respondents do not include an admission of any statutory violation. And so there was some discussion on that, and I think Carolyn has done some research for other states. I think that was the question at the time. What did other states do as far as adopting a policy? It would be my position that that is not something the board should adopt. It limits the board's authority. What happens outside of our settlement is not really within our jurisdiction to decide how other courts would decide those violations. I think our job is to, of course, protect the public, and I think putting something in a consent order that says we are not admitting any guilt, making that a policy, I think limits your power and doesn't really serve to protect the public. But as far as the other state research, I think Carolyn's done some of that, and she can probably speak to that.
Right. Most of the other states say that they have them admit to guilt. They keep that in the policy, and they say it's because it's a consumer protection issue is their main reason for doing it. I only found one state that didn't, and that was a HVAC board in Alabama, and they said their goal was to close the cases and to settle them, and so that was the reason why they did not include it.
It wasn't even their general contractors in Alabama, just the HVAC contractors. And pretty much the legal groups you've talked to here in Tennessee have all been uniformly against it. We have the authority already, or you do, in negotiating a settlement to remove that under certain circumstances. Isn't that the case?
That's correct. All the terms of the consent order are negotiable. They could propose that is a term of the consent order, but we don't necessarily have to have that as a policy.
Have you ever agreed to do that?
That has happened on a case-by-case basis.
So on a case-by-case basis, we can do this anyway.
Correct.
But as far as consumers, the other states don't do this because they consider it not good for consumer protection. Is that right? And this is the Consumer Protection Board.
Right, and they do on a case-by-case basis as well. There's some cases where it's just best to do that, especially when criminal charges are
pending in order to settle the administrative part of it. I could see where they would say this is a matter of settlement, not an admission of guilt. That way they can move on to the criminal matter. But as a policy, I would advise against adopting that policy to say that none of our consent orders would ever say that.
We don't need a motion at all, do we?
Not if we're not creating.
Right.
We want to change the policy, we just don't even need a motion.
right. Something they brought to us to consider it, and so.
More discussion? How about the budget update?
In your tablets, and I think I emailed this, all the budget information I have. Right now, Contractors has a balance of $383,000 and $383,668 to the good. We did just make a payment to Go Bill for the last fiscal year, which ended in July, and that was for $210,000, and that was 50% of our revenue that we had left. As far as LLE, we are running in the red, but that's normal. We do that every other fiscal year because their renewals are staggered because we inherited from the fire marshal's office where they all were set up to expire on the end of September. So that's carried over, and so the majority don't renew then. So we are running a deficit in LLE right now.
But over the 2-year cycle, it won't be a red number, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, from the fiscal year numbers, you can say they usually end up running a positive balance.
That's well understood by the department and finance and administration and the budgeteers. Then you're not held.
Right. And I think that's. Yes, I have a couple of things. One thing is Carter Lawrence, the Assistant Commissioner, he would like to speak to you all.
Morning, board members. Yeah, I actually have some good news to come down and talk about. I understand that y'all have been interested in getting some Lexus books for a while, and Brian McCormack, Deputy Commissioner, and myself have worked to make that happen. We got them down from some drastically high prices to only marginally high prices. We can get, pending your approval and getting some help from some partners to post the links for general purchase online. I have two options for you where you can purchase 500 copies for $10,000, or you can purchase 1,000 copies for $12,000. And the stipulations will be that the links be available for associations to post onto their websites, and that whatever county codes officials wanted to make it available on their websites would also do so that members of the general public could go out and purchase it. So it was coming to tell you all that, and then also to seek approval for moving forward on making that purchase.
I move that we purchase 1,000 books for $12,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very surprising. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other new business? I've got
More, and then I'll turn it over to you. Oh, okay. The 2018 board meeting dates, we do have one change that's suggested, and it's we have it set now for March 27th and 28th, and that is the week of a holiday weekend, Good Friday. So we would like to change it from March 27th to March 20th and 21st. And then I think nobody else has mentioned a problem with the other dates. If so, we'll go ahead and publish these, if that's okay.
I've got something, a couple of things. Does somebody else have something?
There's a proposed summary suspension, just informal conference, but I believe Dennis would like 5 or 10 minute break to prepare before he presents to the board.
And the reason I say that is that I believe the licensee is here with his attorney, just if for any other reason, provide him with some of the documentation that we'll provide to you and literally hand out things to you all.
Can we talk about a couple other things then? Okay. Last meeting, we had a motion, and it was passed about the waive applicants, get us a list prior to our meeting. And this is good, except I'd like to have 2 other things added to it, the qualified agent and what city these are coming out of. Because when I was going through my list, I had questions on some of the people who were had their names, and if I knew who the qualifying agent was or in what city, then I probably wouldn't have had those questions. And this will help catch anybody that possibly have done bad stuff in the past, and we might be able to stop them from doing stuff again. And I'd like to see if that could be done, if I could have a second on that.
Oh, I second.
I don't think it needs a motion, but yeah.
Okay.
Y'all can do that easily, can't you? Easy.
And this was real
We
good.
can do it.
The other thing that I'd like to bring up, and it's, I guess a good note maybe to somebody, but I don't think this is a good note to the board, so to speak, is that Cindy's list meeting.
We're going to miss you, Cindy, I think is what Ronnie's trying to say.
Yeah, Cindy's been an outstanding electrical representative board member, kept us on our toes with felonies and bad guys and bad girls, and attended regularly, all of the above. And we appreciate your service.
Thank you, guys. It's been a long 14 years, and I've seen a lot. And but I will say, under Carolyn's direction and her staff, and the board, you guys could not ask for a
Very good.
Definitely miss you. You've been great. You've done so much work for us, and I think most of the public does not realize how much board members work by reviewing, taking your time to review all these files, and we really appreciate that. And thank you enough for all you've done for us.
Mr. All of us.
yeah. I'm a phone call.
Anybody else have anything? Recess 10 minutes. Ready to present?
I am.
Okay.
Board members, you all should have, Dennis Gregory for the agency, board members, you should have a copy of roughly about 25 or 30 pages, really just of information. This is relates to an informal conference, a summary suspension informal conference. This is not a administrative hearing that you would normally have with an administrative law judge. This is merely before the board for the issue of summary suspension. Of course, just drawing on your past experience, these are informal conferences that we have where that we believe that the public's safety, health, or welfare is in danger. The respondent here is a licensee, Red Homes LLC. Mr. Keith Red and his attorney, Jake Walliver, are here today. Effectively, this came in as a complaint regarding, and again, these are, again, allegations. We don't have, there's no formal admission by any party, but this came in as a complaint regarding forged certificates of occupancy. And if you look on the first page of the handout that I have given you, you'll see where it says response, and this is Mr. Red's response that he provided once the complaint got to him. And he does admit, at least in this response, to forging 2 certificates of occupancy for what we'll just call Lot 33 Timberland and Lot 2 Ashwood Manor. Now, after that, you'll see an indictment that's been that comes from the Murray County Circuit Court. There are other allegations that are contained in the indictment. The only complaint that's been opened with the state, however, are the 2 involving Lot 33 and Lot 2. However, in this scenario, the board can consider all of the evidence. The rules are silent as to what you all can or can't consider, as long as it's relevant. And all this information in here relates to Mr. Red's business. I believe he's a sole proprietorship. I don't know if he has a number of employees working for him, but in any event, he is here today. The agency's view is that given the nature of forged and having his admission at least to 2 of these forged certificates of occupancy, that Mr. or the Red Homes LLC's license should be summarily suspended. But this is, again, going to be something that's going to be in your hands. In the event that the board were to summarily suspend, there would have to be a formal hearing later, unless, of course, there was some agreement between the parties for a voluntary revocation or voluntary suspension of longer than what you all might decide to suspend him here today, if you decided to suspend him at all. But it's the agency's view at this point, given his admissions and the other evidence contained from in the stack of documents that I've given you, that summary suspension is warranted at this time. If you all have any questions for me, or you all just want to continue to kind of digest the information, please go ahead. I would encourage you, however, to hear from Mr. Red's counsel, as he can provide a little more information from the other side of the fence.
Come forward.
Good morning. My name is Jake Wolliver. I am a member of the Murray County Bar. I'm here representing Red Homes LLC
Excuse
today.
me, could you hold off just a little bit? The board would like to review just
Certainly,
a little
I'm
bit.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So there's 6 counts.
That is correct. 6 counts on the indictment.
Anybody else indicted on this same?
Mr. Mason, to my knowledge, no.
Already up here?
Yes.
Okay.
And my name is Jake Wolliver. I'm here representing Red Homes LLC. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, and I will be brief. I know you've had a long agenda. Mr. Red is here today, and as you can see from your packet, he has admitted his mistakes. But reasons matter, ladies and gentlemen, and that kind of gets into what I want to talk to you a little bit about today. According to the mail that I got from Mr. Gregory, the sole reason that you are here today is, and I'm going to read his words, The sole issue to be considered will be whether the public health, safety, or welfare imperatively requires emergency action, including summary suspension of his license. So, again, this is not a full evidentiary hearing. We're not going to put on proof today. We're not going to tell you what those reasons were, why Mr. Redd did what he did. It's enough at this point to say that he acknowledges to you that he did what he's accused of. He was forthcoming to you and to the criminal investigation that's ongoing. He has, in the response to the complaint that was filed against him in this matter, as you can see, he acknowledges that he did the two counts that, or the two items that he was accused of doing, the forgeries. That there are 6 different counts. Those stem from 3 separate occasions, but really it's 3 incidents. Each count is a count for forgery and a count for criminal simulation, which is basically the same thing. I'll assert to you today that these are 3 incidents. Reasons matter, ladies and gentlemen, and what Mr. Redd is asking you to do is hold off judgment against him until you can hear those reasons and give him the full opportunity to tell you everything that went on and why he did what he did. And I assert to you that that's very important, ladies and gentlemen. Redd Homes LLC has been licensed for 11 years. During that time, and this is an estimate, but Mr. Redd believes that he's completed upwards of 160 homes during those 11 years. His license has been in good standing during that time. He's had 0 other complaints and 0 lawsuits filed against him. The items that prevented the certificates of occupancy from being issued in these matters were small items that I'll assert to you were fixed. In one case, it took about 2 weeks because there were some parts to be ordered. In another case, it was fixed well before the closing. Mistakes were made, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm not here to provide excuses, but I would like you to give Mr. Redd the opportunity to give you those explanations, and I think that'll come at a final hearing. Mr. Redd has not been convicted of anything as we stand here today. He is involved in the criminal process under those counts that we mentioned earlier. Those matters will play out in the criminal courts very soon. We expect that there will be a trial on those matters. The sole issue, as Mr. Gregory put, is whether the public health, safety, or welfare imperatively requires you to take emergency action. I assert to you, ladies and gentlemen, that it does not. Mr. Redd has 9 homes currently under construction. That's 9 separate homeowners that are going to be impacted if you take summary action today. That's lots of different subcontractors, and that's Mr. Redd's livelihood that we're talking about. If you take summary action today, I'll assert to you that his career as a home builder is more than likely over. Ladies and gentlemen, what we ask you to do is give him time. Look at those 11 years and those 160 homes that he's had a spotless record up to this point. Give him the benefit of the doubt. These are not emergency issues that we're dealing with here. I don't want to take away anything from what he did and what he's admitted to you and cooperated with this investigation on, but I would ask you to give that strong consideration. Those 9 homeowners that Mr. Redd is going to have to meet with and say that his license has been suspended and they're going to have to find another contractor, those subs that he's going to have to turn away and find other work, those things matter. And we assert to you, ladies and gentlemen, that there's not an emergency pending here that would not allow you the time to hear all the proof that Mr. Redd has to offer and to be able to make a reasoned and educated decision about the matters at hand. And beyond that, ladies and gentlemen, I just hope that you'll look at this matter through the lenses of what we're here for. Again, it bears repeating, the sole issue to be considered, does the public health, safety, or welfare require you to take immediate action? And we believe that the answer to that question is no, not today. Let us have that full evidentiary hearing and put forth all the matters that will weigh in and are germane to your decision, and then make that decision. Thank you.
We've got 6 instances over on 3 different dates. Is that what we're seeing here? Either one of you, it doesn't matter.
No, sir. 3 instances, 6 counts involving those 3 instances. Again, on each instance, there's 1 charge of forgery and there's 1 charge of criminal simulation, which again, I said to you.
My concern is not that. That'll be settled in a court case. My concern is the reason for altering the documents, because the houses weren't completed, things in the houses weren't completed. I understand he got them completed, but if we've got 9 more jobs out there, my concern is he going to continue to act this way? And the only thing I can say is I'm willing to go on the easier side, but if at any point in time before this comes before the board, I'm thinking that it could be severe. That's my thinking. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I suppose council's wanting us to decide whether we need to move on suspension of the license or not.
That's correct. That's the only issue, is whether it's to be suspended. And the reason it's called summarily is because you're doing it without the benefit of a formal hearing where you would have an ALJ, where you'd have rules of evidence. So that's the only issue for you to decide today, is just whether or not you want to suspend or not.
We just had something similar to this with electrical, if you remember, about.
Switch boxes.
Remember?
Yeah.
Tell us
Very similar.
the average value of those 9 homes.
No, that's different. This case at hand, and the case being made. That's what we need to decide today. Do we want to suspend his license?
Here's my concern, one of my concerns. I've got a few concerns. But one, I see a pattern of behavior here on the police report on June 6th of this year, after Mr. Rebb was read his Miranda rights. He said that he admitted that he had forged a certificate of occupancy years ago and doesn't remember where it was. And then he admits to these incidents. So it appears to me that there's a pattern here. And that's one of my concerns. The second concern is that we won't give someone a license if they're on parole. And here we've got somebody under indictment who doesn't even deny that he did it. And I wonder how we can rationalize going to the people of Columbia or anywhere else in this state and say, we've got a guy that's under indictment for breaking the law. He admits he did it, and we're letting him keep his license. I don't see how you do that. It seems to me that whatever his reasons were, that we have laws to forget a contractor indicted for something like this. It doesn't happen much. We refer things to the district attorney, and they don't go anywhere a lot of times. But I think they should. But this was severe enough and egregious enough that the district attorney went in front of the grand jury and got 6 counts. And then we've got what looks like something that's happened from his own statement to the police on June 6th, that he'd done it once years ago, but he doesn't even know where it was for sure. And that's to me, that's egregious. It seems to me, from what I've heard, whatever the reasons were, and I guess reasons do matter to an extent, there's a theory in law, counselor, I believe, that there's a greater good theory. That if you break the speed limit driving somebody to the hospital, that's not really breaking the law, because there's a greater good to be served. But I can't imagine what greater good there is to forge documents and to forge these certificates of occupancy and to break the law that would be sufficient to rationalize or justify what's happened here. So those are my concerns, and that's what I think about the whole situation.
Yeah, just speak to those very, very briefly. On the first concern, I think what you're reading is that Mr. Redd was self-reporting the first issue that had occurred, the first instance. So I don't think he was talking about years prior. I think he was referring to the incident that occurred in 2016.
That's not what it says.
That's my understanding of he was putting that out there to say this had happened before. As to the second, a parolee has been convicted in a court of law, and Mr. Redd hasn't been convicted yet as to why you deny licenses to parolees. So, again, I don't offer excuses, but I would encourage members of the board to hear the full story before you make judgment. And again, this is one of those situations where if you summarily suspend, Mr. Redd's building career is officially over. I mean, that's what that comes down to, and I know that's neither here nor there, but I hope the board will at least take that into account.
Well, let me just say one thing. Conviction is not the standard we necessarily go by to make a decision about summary suspension. And as I say, there's not even a question here of him denying what's happened. It happened, didn't it?
Yes, what you have in front of you is accurate. You have his response, and he was forthcoming with that. And I understand. And I only mention that about the parolees is because your concern was that you don't allow those folks on parole to get a license. And I understand that completely. But there is a difference there because that conviction disqualifies in the subsequent parole.
Back what Mr. Mason, I'm going to read you this sentence, okay? During the interview, Mr. Redd admitted that he had forged a certificate of occupancy years ago and doesn't remember where it was. That concerns me. He's been building 160 houses. How many more houses has he forged the certificate on? We don't know. We don't know if he did or didn't. We don't know how many houses are good, how many houses are bad. That concerns me. It really does.
Do we need to make something in the form of a motion? Or
Yes, you would need to decide if there was an emergent enough situation to justify a summary suspension and make that decision to summarily suspend his license or not, however you all decide.
Not the real one. So, and I understand not justifying what the person did at all, but that's what we need to, I mean, as a board, we need to.
I think so. My personal opinion is he's willfully violated the law these 3 times and apparently once before. And other contractors in this state don't do as a matter of course.
harming what is happening right now? I don't know. It's just something.
No shortage of quality licensed contractors in Murray County.
Yeah, may I speak to that? And I apologize for breaking in, but you're exactly right. There's no shortage, but the problem that these homeowners are going to run into is that they've got to find someone who's willing to come in mid-job, take on the project as it stands, and then warrant the project afterwards. And that's what's going to be the difficult part of this process. And I assert to you that there are a lot of good contractors in Murray County, but Murray County is also experiencing an economic boom where I think that these 9 homeowners are going to have a very difficult time in finding somebody to complete these projects. If there's anything short, and this is my first opportunity to appear in front of this board, if there's any level of oversight or anything short of a summary suspension that this board would agree to, Mr. Redd would be all in favor of that. He is under an intense level of scrutiny as it is. There are 9 homeowners out there that he is self-reported to that are also worried about their projects and how this matter goes forward. So if there's anything short of a summary suspension that would allow Mr. Redd to fulfill the obligations that he's taken on to these 9 homeowners, we're certainly willing and ready to try to comply with whatever those terms may be.
How long before this would come to a formal hearing?
Next meeting is in end of January. I don't see why that the formal couldn't be ready by then. Of course, that, again, assuming that we'd have plenty of time.
I'm assuming they're more than willing to get it over with.
I agree.
How about the state? I'm assuming we can put it on?
We can put it on the end of January.
I mean, do we have could
I think
I'm not so concerned about a state inspector. I'm concerned from the aspect of the customer. I'm not so sure that we're going to do those 9 customers justice. I'm not so sure that anyone was harmed to the point where 9 families are going to have to run out and find a different contractor to finish their home because we can't wait 30 days to hear the case.
Well, in 30 days, what are we going to do? We're going to, I assume, revoke his license. And if we revoke his license in 30 days, maybe he can finish 9 homes in 30 days. I'm not so sure he can. I'm concerned that we're going to basically say, okay, you forged this stuff and you broke the law, but that's okay. Go ahead and keep working and keep making money. And I don't think that's responsible of us as a board.
What stages are these homes in? I'm curious. Are these?
The one at the lease stage is framing.
Oh, theoretically speaking, you would have 3 of them wiped out by the end of the year, and then concentrated, just leaving the one that's framing. How are these homes being financed? Is it a cost plus? Are you on a cost plus, or they're hard bid? Okay, and when they're getting their loans, are they conventional loans, VA loans, or FHA loans? Do you know? So you don't have they don't have permanent loans right now. So really.
Nobody has permanent loans.
So right now, when
All customers except for one, we've got one spec.
Right.
one person was paying cash.
But their permit loans, you don't know anything about their permit loans. That's what I'm concerned about.
No, they don't have permit.
Are they gonna get permit loans when the house is complete?
Yes.
So they'll either get FHA or VA loans when the house is complete, or conventional.
And one of the homes is just in the framing stage? So we're talking about, what, 4 to 6 months to finish it? So,
Are you able to post a bond at all for the completion of those?
Bond for each home, or just a blanket bond with this board?
Either one?
Yes, depending on the availability of the bond. I mean, that's why I asked that question. We run into situations with bonding where unique bonds are difficult to get. So if you'll specify the kind of bond, I'm certain that Mr. Red will make diligent effort to try to get whatever bond you impose. But just knowing that some bonds are more difficult to get, the more specialized the bond, the more difficult to get.
You don't have a track record with a bonding company at this point?
Does Mr. Red have a track record with a bonding company? And I may be speaking out of school a little bit. I don't think so. The only reason Mr. Red would have a track record with a bonding company is if he was posting bonds to post over subcontractors' liens. And he's never had an issue with that. So, no, sir, we don't have a standing relationship with a bonding company.
What's the average house cost? 400 times 9 is 3 million.
are you,
What size letter of credit could he post?
That would be more of a question for the banker than us. If you'll give us an idea of what you're looking for, then we can report back to your legal counsel and let you know. I mean, I'd love to say you could get whatever letter of credit you determine, but that's just not practical. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you something I can't deliver. But if you'll tell me what you're looking at, then we'll certainly look into it.
what's the maximum penalty that he faces on criminal indictment? Do you know?
Class E felony.
Class C felony. So a bank offering a letter of credit to someone facing a felony conviction, possible jail time, would be hard to get, don't you think?
Mr. Red has a very good relationship with lenders. His credit is spotless. In an ordinary case, I would agree with you. I don't necessarily think that that's the case here.
Are you soliciting new business? You're not. You haven't talked to any homeowners, not offered to make any new starts?
I had 3 or 4.
March 1st. What's your intention now about starting new houses? But if we don't suspend, there's really no legal barrier to this, to him starting new business, is there, counsel?
No.
We would sign a consent order to that effect. If that's the will of the board, that no new houses start until a resolution is done, then very simply, we could do a consent order to that. I mean, there's going to be some kind of order, I think, that comes from your proceedings today. Certainly, if the board wants to ensure that no more houses are begun, then we can agree to that as a condition of whatever you choose to do today.
Well, it's not just that for me. in the completion of these 9 houses, I don't want to see any other further violations. If that's why I'm saying, if something happens in the meantime, I'm thinking that you were talking about his career being over. I think his license would be in jeopardy at that time, as far as I would be concerned.
Most definitely, and again, that, we would agree to that language in an order. Mr. Red's concern right now is to finish these 9 projects, and then we'll see what the future holds beyond that. But that's the concern at this point, is the contractual and moral obligations to these 9 homeowners to get that finished and complete and be done. And I know that may not be what this board wants to hear, but that's the concern that we stand here today, is if there's a summary suspension, that's not going to happen, and there's going to be a hardship on those 9 people. Let him continue and complete those projects, or get as far as he can get before there's a final hearing in this matter. If it's 3 and we're only left with 6, then that's 3 people that are living in a home and don't have to deal with this. So that's why I say we're willing to work with whatever stipulations this board has, but help us finish what's already out there and begun.
Well, I have a problem with letting him continue at all. I personally agree with the state's request that we summarily suspend today. I certainly would have, if the board disagrees with me on that, and they may, a problem with allowing him to continue work on a house that's just in a framing stage. There's no urgency there. And some of these others, he says one's within a week and a couple of more by the end of the year. But where do you draw the line on that? And you get down to the base problem here, and that's unethical, irresponsible, criminal activity that he's admitted to. And that's where I land on this. And to come in and appeal for the homeowners, I'm not sure the homeowners of these 3 homes that got a undeserved certificate of occupancy were well served at the time.
Homes all in Columbia, Tennessee.
All in Murray County.
Murray County.
Well, we got to make a motion one way or the other, and I'm going to make a motion to not summarily suspend the license today.
I'd like to amend that to summarily suspend it as of January 1st. Houses by then. And others find another contractor. I move an amendment.
I won't accept the amendment to the motion.
Okay.
I'll keep my.
Okay, we got a motion and a second.
I'd like to amend the motion to.
I will accept that amendment.
You accept
I accept it.
other amendments or any other? We're gonna have a roll call on this. Starting from my left, Jerry Hayes.
Yes.
Mark.
No.
Yes.
Cindy DeBusk, yes.
Keith Whittington, yes.
Ronnie Tickle, yes.
Are we going to have a formal hearing at the January meeting?
January 30th, that would be the next available formal, assuming that everything comes together in terms of and I don't know why that it wouldn't right now with the state's few witnesses unless Mr. Walliver would have some reason to ask for a continuance between that time and now, which I don't.
Well, let me remind the board now, we're going to come in January. He's going to have, he says, completed work on 3 of these homes. He's going to make his profit from them. By January 30th, he's going to be further along on the other 6, And we're going to have, well, I'm within just a couple of months of finishing these homes, these poor homeowners. You know, we got to think about them. And I just wonder where the consequences are going to be for this activity. Because it seems to me the board, we've made a mistake, but there's really no consequences here. And I'm concerned about that, and I'm concerned that the board has sent a wrong message.
I'd like to just say one thing. Knowing what you know today, I would suggest that you try to get somebody to help you finish those other houses, or talk to your people and see if you can swap them off to another contractor for your benefit, your homeowner's benefit, since that's what appears that your attorney is basing things on more than anything else. And not so much compassion for you as your homeowners being stuck, and they are definitely not at fault.
If I can state, just for clarity of the record, so the board's decision is to deny the summary suspension, but the caveat is that no new construction can begin.
That's correct.
Okay.
And that we have a formal hearing in January.
And a formal hearing to be set for January 30th.
Everybody agreement to that?
We've already had that vote.
I just want to be sure that everybody understands what's going on. Is there any other business?
We adjourn.
Can I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, we're adjourned.